Elena couldn't sleep that night. She lay on her narrow bed staring at the cracked ceiling as the sound of dripping rain tapped against the window pane. Her phone sat on the desk across the room, its black screen glowing faintly with the last message. She had received, "This is only the beginning." She knew what it meant. Kane was watching her. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a problem. She sat up, reached for her notebook and flipped through the pages. For years she had written down details about the powerful men and women she worked for. Not just Kane, but politicians, judges, businessmen who visited him. She had jotted down conversations, whispers, names, dates, amounts. She never really knew why she did it. Perhaps part of her always believed one day the truth would matter. Tonight, as she flipped through the notes, it felt less like a diary and more like a weapon waiting to be used. Her eyes landed on one page in particular. 3 months ago, she had overheard Kane talking in hushed tones with a senator. The words had been sharp, dangerous, filled with threats. She had written them down word for word, reading them again. Her hands trembled. They weren't just business deals. They were crimes. The next morning, as she made her way back to the tower, Elena noticed something different. A black SUV was parked across the street. 2 men sat inside, their eyes hidden behind dark glasses. She looked away, but her instincts told her they were not just passers-by. Inside the tower, security seemed tighter. The guards scanned her, longer checked her bag more thoroughly. When she finally reached the penthouse, she felt her nerves tightening around her ribs like a vice. Kane wasn't there, but his presence hung in the air. She moved silently, cleaning room after room. The glass she had picked up yesterday was gone, replaced by a new pristine table as if nothing had ever happened. She bent down to clean near the bookshelf and noticed something unusual. A drawer slightly ajar. She hesitated, then pulled it open. Inside were files thick with documents. She only glanced for a second, but the names she saw were powerful ones. Judges, journalists, CEOs, all tied to Kane. Her blood ran cold. She quickly shut the drawer, afraid even of breathing near it, but the seed was planted. She realized Kane's empire was more fragile than he let on. It wasn't invincible. If those documents ever saw daylight, the giant would crumble that night. As she left the building, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message was chillingly precise. "We know where you live." Elena froze on the sidewalk, rain soaking her hair. She looked up and saw a man leaning against a lamppost, watching her. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there staring. Then he walked away, disappearing into the dark. She hurried home, locking her door with shaking hands. Her heart pounded, but her mind was sharper than ever. If Kane wanted to scare her into silence, it was already too late. She had crossed the line. She wouldn't go back. For the next few days, the tension grew. Each night she returned to the penthouse, Kane found a new way to remind her she was being watched. Sometimes it was a casual comment about the street she lived on. Sometimes it was a glass deliberately shattered at her feet. Always, it was a test, a warning, a reminder of who he was. But Elena no longer felt small. Each word, each threat fueled the fire inside her. She cleaned the penthouse with her head high, never bowing, never flinching. Kane noticed he leaned on the bar one evening, sipping his whiskey, his eyes studying her like she was a puzzle he hadn't yet solved. "You're different," he said. "Most people break when they see what I can do, but you're still standing." Why? Elena didn't stop, dusting the shelf. She didn't even turn around. "Because someone has to," she answered quietly. "Someone has to look you in the eye and tell you that you're not God. You're just a man with too much money and too many lies." The silence that followed was heavy, thick. Kane's glass tapped against the counter. He laughed, but it wasn't amusement. It was the laugh of a predator circling prey. "You're either very brave, Maid," he said slowly, "or very stupid. and brave and stupid often end up in the same grave. Elena met his eyes this time, her voice unwavering. Then I'll choose my grave. But I won't live in fear anymore. For the first time, Kane didn't reply. He just stared at her, his jaw tight, his hands curling. Around the glass, he didn't like losing control, and Elena had just taken a piece of it from him. Later that night, Elena wrote everything down in her notebook, not just what she overheard, but how he looked, how he reacted. Every detail mattered. She didn't know when or how, but she knew one day this truth would be used. The storm outside raged louder, lightning cutting across the night sky as thunder rolled over the city. In her small apartment, Elena sat by the window watching the rain. She realized she had crossed into a war she couldn't escape. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't running away. She was standing her ground. And somewhere deep inside her, a voice whispered that she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been silenced, crushed, or ignored by men like Kane. The Maid had dared to fight back, and the storm was only beginning. The days bled into each other as summer pressed down on the city. The heat made the tower feel suffocating, the glass walls trapping the air like a greenhouse. Elena moved through it silently, her rag and bucket in hand, but every step felt heavier. Every corner she turned carried the weight of unseen eyes. Kane's men no longer tried to hide their presence. They followed her with their stares, their footsteps echoing behind her when she entered and exited the building. Sometimes she could hear them whispering her name. Sometimes they laughed low and sharp as if sharing a private joke about her. She knew what they were doing. They were tightening the noose slowly, deliberately. One evening, as she finished cleaning the marble floor of the penthouse, Kane appeared from his private office. His suit was immaculate, his tie the color of blood. He leaned against the wall and watched her work. His silence stretched out until she finally stood and met his gaze. "Do you know what I admire most about you, Maid?" he said at last. His voice was smooth, too smooth. "You don't know when to quit. Most people crumble the moment they realize how dangerous I am. But you keep standing. You keep fighting. I wonder why." Elena set the mop aside. Her chest rose and fell, but her voice came out steady. "Because fear only works if I let it. Fear doesn't clean your lies off the floor. It doesn't erase the things you've done. I see them, Kane. I see all of it." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Kane's eyes darkened. His jaw clenched. Then, with a sudden violent motion, he swept the glass of wine from the table, sending it shattering across the floor. The liquid spread like blood on the marble. Elena didn't flinch. She simply picked up her rag, knelt down, and began to clean. The air crackled with something dangerous. Kane crouched down close to her, his voice a low whisper. "Careful, Maid. One day you'll scrub something you can't wash away." Elena raised her head. Their faces were only inches apart. "I already have," she whispered back. That night as she left the tower, she felt the shift. The warnings were over. Kane was no longer trying to scare her. He was preparing to destroy her. She barely slept. She sat at her desk, flipping through her notebook, reading and rereading the evidence she had collected. Names, dates, deals, bribes, threats. It was all there. The web of corruption spread wider than she could have imagined, and Kane was at the center. But it wasn't just ink on paper anymore. Kane was closing in. She could feel it in the air, in the footsteps that trailed her down the block, in the shadow of the SUV that always seemed to appear near her building. She knew it was only a matter of time before he made his move. The breaking point came 2 nights later. She was walking home, the street unusually empty, when a car screeched to a halt beside her. Two men stepped out, dark suits, dark eyes. Before she could react, they grabbed her one on each arm, dragging her toward the alley. She kicked, struggled, clawed at their hands, but they were too strong. "Boss just wants a word," one of them muttered as they forced her into the car. The door slammed shut. The city blurred past the tinted windows as her heart pounded against her ribs. They drove her to a warehouse on the edge of the river. The air inside was damp, thick with the smell of oil and rust. Kane stood at the center, his hands folded behind his back. He smiled when he saw her relax. "Elena," he said almost kindly, "if I wanted you gone, you'd already be gone. I just want to understand why. Why keep pushing? Why keep poking at a lion? You think you'll win. You think the truth will save you." Elena's wrists ached from the men gripping her arms, but she forced her voice to remain calm. "The truth isn't for me, it's for everyone you've crushed under your lies. You think you're untouchable, but giants fall, Kane, and when they do, it's the little people who finally breathe." Again, Kane's smile faded. His eyes turned to steel. He stepped closer until she could feel the heat of his breath. "Giants don't fall, Maid, they crush, and I'm giving you one last chance. Walk away, stay silent, forget everything you think, you know, or I'll bury you so deep no one will remember your name." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the drip of water, somewhere in the shadows. Elena met his gaze unflinching. "Then bury me," she said, "because I will. Never stay silent." The men tightened their grip, ready for his order. Kane's jaw flexed, rage burning in his eyes. But then something shifted. He raised his hand, and the men released her. "Go," he said coldly. "But remember this. Every breath you take from now on is borrowed time. You've declared war, Maid, and war has no mercy." Elena stumbled out of the warehouse, her heart hammering. She knew the line had been crossed. Kane would never let her go, not now. But she also knew something else. She wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was fighting to win. That night, she began copying her notes, typing them into hidden files, backing them up in places Kane couldn't reach. She sent fragments to anonymous emails she created. Herself, pieces of the puzzle scattered across the digital void. She wasn't ready to strike, but she was preparing. The storm had broken. There was no turning back. Elena woke the next morning to the sound of her phone vibrating across the nightstand. She reached for it, bleary-eyed. Her breath caught when she saw the notification. Her bank account had been frozen. She tried again, double-checking the numbers. The balance read 0. Panic prickled across her skin. She dialed the bank, the tinny voice of the representative coldly confirming that her funds had been seized under investigation, suspicious activity flagged by an anonymous complaint. Her mind spun. She knew whose hand was behind it. Kane had cut off her lifeline. The hours that followed dragged her through humiliation. Her landlord called demanding rent. Her utilities were shut off in the middle of the night. Even the corner grocery where she bought bread and milk refused her debit card. The walls of her life crumbled piece by piece, leaving her stranded in the ruins. Yet it was not only her survival Kane targeted, he struck at her dignity. He had someone spread rumors about her in the building where she worked. Overnight, she became the subject of whispers. The other staff avoided her eyes. The security guard who once greeted her with a nod now looked at her with suspicion. The elevator attendants turned cold, their silence sharp as knives. But Kane's cruelty did not end there. He moved against her family. Her younger brother David called trembling. His scholarship funds had mysteriously vanished. The university claimed unpaid tuition, demanded immediate payment, or threatened expulsion. He was panicked on the other end of the line, his voice breaking. "Lena, what do I do? I can't lose this, I can't." Elena gripped the phone tightly, her knuckles white. She wanted to scream, she wanted to collapse, but she forced her voice. steady. Hold on. I'll fix this, David. I promise I'll fix this. But she knew promises were only words. Cain was tearing her life apart, and she was powerless to shield the people she loved. For the first time, doubt crept into her heart. She sat, alone in her dark apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound. Her notes and files lay spread out across the table, accusing her, reminding her of the fight she had chosen. Was it worth it? Was the truth worth destroying everything she held dear? The answer came in the form of a memory. Her mother's hands roughened by years of cleaning homes, hands that had carried Elena and David through hunger and hardship. Her mother's voice echoing, "We don't bow to cruelty, Lena. Not ever they. Can take everything from us, but they can't take our voice unless we give it." Elena wiped her tears. She would not give it. Not now, not ever. The next day, she walked back into the glass tower. She wore the same maid's uniform, the same scuffed shoes, but her stride was steadier. Inside the penthouse, Cain was seated at the table sipping coffee as if he had not just dismantled her life. He looked up and smirked. "Still here, yes," she said. Her voice was flat but firm. "Still here. Still standing?" Cain's smile faltered for the briefest of moments before twisting into something darker. "Not for long," he muttered. Later that afternoon, she overheard something that cut deeper than all the others. Cain was on the phone, pacing, his office door slightly ajar. His words carried into the hall. "Yes, she's stubborn. But everyone has a breaking point. Press harder on the brother. Make him desperate. She'll fold." Elena's blood went cold. Her worst fear confirmed Cain would use David as the rope to strangle her resolve. She slipped away quietly, but her hands shook as she folded laundry in the corner. That night she called David again. His voice cracked with despair. "They told me I've got a week, Lena. A week or I'm out." What am I supposed to do? Elena closed her eyes, fighting back the tears. "You're going to stay calm. I'll find a way. Just trust me." But as she hung up, she knew trust was not enough. Time was running out. She needed leverage against Cain, something that would hit him as hard as he had hit her. She dug back into her files, combing through every detail, every transaction she had logged. Something caught her eye, a series of wire transfers routed through shell companies' offshore accounts, laundering millions into political campaigns. She traced them back meticulously and froze when she saw the recipient, a senator, a powerful one. This was it. This was the crack in the armor. Cain was not just corrupt, he was feeding corruption at the highest levels. If she could expose this, it would not only destroy him, but also shield her from his retaliation, because it would become too big, too public to bury. But exposing it meant risk. Beyond risk, it meant walking directly into the fire. Her heart pounded as she drafted an anonymous message compiling documents, screenshots, records. She uploaded them into an encrypted folder, preparing to send it to a journalist. She trusted a woman known for chasing stories. Others feared. Elena hesitated, her finger hovering over the button, her entire life balanced on the edge of this moment. Before she could send it, the apartment window shattered. A brick crashed onto the floor glass, spraying across the room. Attached to it was a note written in thick, black marker. "Stop or he bleeds." Elena's hands trembled as she unfolded it. Inside was a photo of David walking across campus. The message was clear. Cain's reach was everywhere. He could strike any time. She sank to her knees, the weight of it. Crushing her chest, Cain had ripped open her wound and poured salt into it. She wanted to scream. She wanted to disappear, but the fire inside her refused to die. If she stopped now, Cain would win. He would keep winning. He would keep destroying lives in silence. Elena stood clutching the photo to her chest. She whispered into the night, "You won't break me, Cain. You can take my money, my name, my safety." but you'll never take my fight." For the first time, she realized the truth. This battle was no longer just about her or David. It was about everyone Cain had silenced, everyone too afraid to speak. She was their voice, she was their defiance, and she would not stop. The morning after the brick crashed through her window, Elena rose with a resolve she had never known before. The fear that had once shackled her was still there, clinging to her ribs like chains, but something new burned beneath it, a fire, a refusal to bow. She cleaned up the glass, carefully wrapping the threatening note and photo in a plastic sleeve. Then she sat at her table, staring at the mountain of files she had gathered over months. Each page was a piece of Cain's empire, every line of numbers a hidden crime. He had used his billions to buy silence and fear, but he had made one mistake. He had underestimated the maid who scrubbed his floors. Elena dialed a number. A woman's voice answered, brisk but curious. "This is Harper, Ms. "Harper?" Elena's voice wavered at first, then steadied. "I have something. You need to see it. It's about Cain and the senator." There was a pause, then a low whistle. "That's a dangerous name to toss around. Who are you?" "I can't tell. You over the phone. But I have evidence. I'll meet you tonight. Safe place, your call." The journalist gave her an address, a cafe in a quiet district. Harper was fearless, known for exposing corruption, despite threats. Her name alone carried weight. Elena clung to that like a lifeline. All day she worked silently in Cain's tower, scrubbing counters and dusting shelves, pretending she hadn't crossed a line that could cost her everything. But her eyes were sharper now. She noticed details: Cain's agitation, his constant phone calls, the way he barked orders into the receiver. He was losing control of something. She was certain of it. By evening, she slipped away, carrying a folder tucked under her arm. Inside were copies of the documents, not the originals. She would never risk everything in one move. The cafe glowed warmly in the corner of the street. Harper sat waiting, dark curls tied back, notebook, open pen, tapping the page. Her eyes flicked up when Elena entered, sharp, calculating, but not unkind. "You're late," Harper said. "Hard to walk into a death sentence on time," Elena replied, sitting down. She slid the folder across the table. "Read." Harper scanned the papers, her brow furrowing, her pen forgotten. "My God, this isn't just dirty money. This is a pipeline. Millions funneled to the senator and 2 other names. Do you understand what this means?" "Yes," Elena whispered. "It means Cain isn't untouchable anymore. It means if I go down, I won't go down alone." Harper leaned back, her eyes glinting. "You realize what happens if I publish this, right? It won't just end his career. He'll come after you harder than before. He'll throw every shadow he owns at you." Elena met her gaze steady. "He already has. He tried to starve me, freeze me, humiliate me. He even threatened my brother. If I walk away now, he wins forever, and I can't let him win." Harper studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, Maid. You've got guts. I'll dig into this, but I'll need more. This isn't enough to topple giants." "You'll have it," Elena promised. "Just give me time." They parted ways. Harper disappearing into the night with the folder, Elena walking home, her heart pounding with equal parts dread and determination. She knew Cain would sense the walls closing in. He always did, and she was right. The next morning, the building buzzed with tension. Security swarmed the lobby. The staff whispered nervously. Cain stormed through, with a face like stone. His eyes caught Elena, briefly narrowing, as if he could smell the rebellion on her. He said nothing, but the weight of his stare lingered like smoke. That afternoon, he summoned her into his office. She obeyed, hands clasped behind her apron. He leaned against his desk, sipping whiskey, his smile sharp and cruel. "You've been busy, Elena," he said softly. "Making friends in places you shouldn't. I admire your courage, I really do. But courage has consequences. Her stomach tightened, but she forced her voice calm. "I don't know what you mean, sir," he chuckled darkly. "Oh, you know exactly. I'll tell you this once, drop whatever fantasy you've built, stop poking around, stop talking to journalists, or the boy gets hurt." Her blood ran cold. He had discovered her meeting already. His reach was endless. But instead of cowering, she lifted her chin. "You can take everything from me, but you won't silence me. Not anymore." Kane's smile vanished, replaced by a flash of fury. He slammed the glass down, shattering it against the floor. "You think you're stronger than me? You're nothing. You scrub floors, you clean up the filth of men like me. You don't win. You don't fight back. You crawl. And when I'm done, you'll beg to crawl." Elena turned and walked out, without another word. Her legs trembled, but her heart thundered with pride. For the first time, she had defied him to his face, and that defiance was worth every ounce of fear. The next nights blurred into action. She dug deeper, hacking into files, sneaking photos of contracts hidden in drawers, copying encrypted drives she found left unattended. Every piece of evidence she gathered, she fed to Harper. Together, they built a case like bricks, stacked one over another until a wall began to rise, a wall strong enough to trap Kane inside it. But Kane fought back harder. He had David followed. He spread lies painting Elena as unstable, violent, a thief he bribed neighbors to testify against. Her fabricated police reports that painted her as dangerous. One evening, she returned home to find her apartment door kicked in, her belongings shredded across the floor. On the wall, scrawled in red paint, "Stop or you're dead." She sat amidst the wreckage, shaking with rage, not fear. This was Kane's way. He wanted her broken, but the more he tore at her, the more unbreakable she became. She picked up the red-stained scrap of wall plaster, stared at it, and whispered, "If I die, I'll die fighting." The turning point came weeks later. Harper called, her voice urgent. "Elena, you need to see this. I dug into Kane's offshore accounts. There's more than politics here. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. He's not just dirty, he's a monster." Elena's chest tightened. The weight of it was heavier than she imagined. She had thought she was exposing a corrupt billionaire. Now she realized she was staring at an empire of blood and ruin. Kane was not merely feared because of his wealth. He was feared because of what he controlled, but that knowledge only sharpened her resolve. If she succeeded, she wouldn't just bring down a man. She would dismantle a kingdom of terror. And so she set her plan into motion. She reached out to the one person Kane had never expected her to contact, one of his own former allies, a man Kane had betrayed and left ruined. She found him living in shadows, bitter and vengeful. She sat across from him in a dingy bar and whispered, "Help me, and I'll bring him down, once and for all." The man leaned forward, eyes burning with hatred. "You've got guts, Maid. I lost everything to Kane. If you've got the proof, I've got the names and dates. Together we bury him." From that moment, Elena was no longer fighting, alone. She had allies, Harper the journalist, the betrayed insider, and slowly others followed, former employees, silenced victims, people who had lived under Kane's shadow. They whispered to her, shared scraps of information, tipped her off on his movements. They became her network, her army, and with every step, Kane grew more paranoid. His power still immense but crumbling under the weight of suspicion. He lashed out more violently, but each strike only exposed him further. The giant was stumbling, and Elena, the maid who once scrubbed his marble floors, stood ready to deliver the blow that would bring him to his knees. The city felt different that morning. Gray clouds sagged low in the sky as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to break. Elena stood by her window watching the skyline, her hands trembling around a chipped mug of coffee. She hadn't slept all night. Every corner of her apartment carried Kane's threats, his shadow stretching longer than ever. Yet for the first time, the fear didn't matter. She had reached the end of the road. The war between them was about to finish. She laid out everything on the table, neatly arranged piles of documents, flash drives, photographs, copies of contracts, bank transfers, whistleblower testimony. It looked almost innocent, a spread of paperwork. But she knew the truth. Each page was dynamite. Each drive a match. Together they were the explosion that would rip through Kane's empire. Her phone buzzed. Harper's voice came crackling through, sharp, urgent. "It's time, Elena. The network's ready, the insiders. Testimony is prepped. I've got the editor on standby. If you bring the rest tonight, we go live tomorrow morning. And once it's out there, Kane can't bury it." Elena closed her eyes. Exhaling, slow relief and dread mingled. "Tomorrow morning. He falls." "Yes," Harper replied. "But it means tonight he'll fight like hell. Hold on to your courage. He'll know it's coming." Elena hung up and glanced at the photo of David pinned above her desk. His smiling face filled her with the strength she needed. She whispered, "This is for you, little brother, for all of us." That afternoon, she reported to Kane's tower one last time. The building buzzed with nervous energy. Security, doubled guards posted at every door. Kane's paranoia was a living thing. Everyone could feel it. When Elena passed through the halls, whispers followed her footsteps. She felt their eyes, some full of pity, others of fear. Kane's office door loomed ahead. 2 guards flanked it, silent and rigid. When she entered, Kane sat behind his vast desk, but he looked different. He was thinner, darker eyes, sunken fury etched into every line of his face. He didn't rise when she approached. He simply stared as though trying to pierce her soul. "You've been busy," he said, voice low, dangerous. Elena kept her hands clasped tight to hide the tremor. "Just doing my job." "Don't insult me." His hand slammed down on the desk, rattling glasses. "I know about Harper. I know about the files. You think you've won. But you haven't understood one thing. I don't lose. Not to men, not to governments, and certainly not to a maid." Her breath hitched, but she stood straighter. "That's exactly why you're going to lose. You thought power made you untouchable, but power blinded you. You never saw the people beneath you, the ones you stepped on, the ones you destroyed. I'm not just a maid. I'm every voice you tried to silence." For a moment there was silence, thick as smoke. Kane's eyes blazed. Then he rose, suddenly knocking his chair back. "If you release that evidence, I will erase you, Elena. You will vanish so completely, no one will remember your name." She felt her body quake, but her voice came out clear. "If I vanish the truth, won't I made sure of it? Copies everywhere, allies ready. If I die, you go down with me." Kane froze. His jaw tightened. Rage boiled in his eyes, but beneath it, she saw something else for the first time. Doubt, fear. The cracks were spreading through. The giant. That night, Elena met Harper and the insider at a safe house. They worked in tense silence, finalizing files, recording testimony, building the release package Harper's editor called every hour, confirming security backups across servers, worldwide. No amount of money or power could stop the storm once it began, but Kane wasn't finished. He sent his wolves. After midnight, as Elena left the safe house, 2 black SUVs screeched to a halt, armed men spilling out. Elena's heart lurched. She ran, her feet pounding pavement, adrenaline burning her lungs. Gunshots cracked the night glass, shattered around her. She dove into an alley, sprinting between dumpsters, breath ragged, just when her legs threatened to collapse. Headlights flared. A car screeched to a stop. Harper leaned out, shouting, "Get in!" Elena dove inside. The car tore down the street, bullets sparking against metal. Harper's jaw was clenched, her hands white on the wheel. "He's desperate. He knows it's over. He'll kill you before he lets you finish this." Elena clutched the folder to her chest, whispering fiercely, "Then he'll have to kill me running." By dawn, they reached the newsroom, a fortress of buzzing screens and sleepless journalists. Harper stormed in, tossing the files on a desk. "Here it is, the empire of rot. Now burn it down." The room erupted, reporters scanning pages, typing furiously, editors shouting orders, photocopiers hummed, servers roared, evidence poured across the globe like floodwaters, unstoppable, uncontainable. By the time Kane woke up that morning, headlines were already spreading. Billionaire tied to political bribery, offshore accounts. Link Kane to human trafficking. Senator implicated in scandal. The city's televisions blared the news. The internet exploded. Stock markets trembled. Police cars swarmed Kane's building. Warrants signed, sealed, delivered. The giant had fallen into the fire inside his office. Kane raged like a trapped beast, throwing glasses, smashing, paintings barking orders into dead phones. But nothing answered back. His empire was burning faster than he could stamp out the flames. Alina watched from the street below, standing among crowds who stared at the breaking news screens. Some gasped, some cheered. Others whispered in awe. She clutched David's photo close to her chest, whispering, "We did it, brother. We made them see." Within hours, Kane was escorted out of his tower in handcuffs. Cameras flashed, crowds roared his once untouchable figure. Now, small, broken his eyes, hollow, as he was shoved into a waiting police car. The man everyone feared was finally brought down. Not by another billionaire, not by a senator, not by a powerful rival, but by a maid. Elena didn't celebrate. She didn't cry. She simply stood still, letting the weight of it sink in. She knew this was only the beginning. The trials would take years. The networks of corruption ran deep, but the fear had been broken, the silence shattered. She had dared to fight back, and that act had lit a fire no one could extinguish. Weeks later, she sat in Harper's office. Sunlight streaming through the windows, papers scattered around, coffee cups stacked. Harper leaned back, studying Elena. "You realize what you've done right. You didn't just expose him. You gave people hope that the powerless can rise, that truth can survive." Elena smiled faintly. "I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted to protect my brother. I just wanted justice." "Sometimes," Harper said softly. "That's what makes a hero." Elena stepped outside the newsroom into the city air. For the first time in years, she felt light. The weight of Kane's shadow was gone. She could breathe again. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was the woman who dared to fight back, and the world would never forget it.